The market on Zenter Prime was chaos perfected. A ballet of neon lights, floating crates, and alien chatter in a dozen frequencies that made Jax's head spin faster than a grav cycle on turbo. He was carrying a tray of energy drinks, liquid pulses that glimmered like captured lightning, and trying not to spill a single one as he wove between a group of four-legged vendors selling hover tomatoes and a pair of angry sentient vending machines debating the ethics of artificial flavor. Jax had always thought himself reasonably nimble, but this morning his coordination was equivalent to a drunken moon crab attempting ballet. Somewhere overhead, a holographic banner flickered. Grand Annual Tech Bazaar where the universe shops. The universe apparently was also very good at bumping into humans. He rounded a corner and collided with someone, or rather, someone collided with him, which in his mind made it slightly her fault. The tray lurched, and a sparkling blue drink narrowly avoided a short-circuiting crate. Jax's eyes widened as he looked up and saw her. She was striking, impossibly so, tall, poised, and undeniably human-looking, except for the long ears that curved elegantly from her head, twitching slightly as if they had their own opinions about the situation. She smiled politely, though the twitch of her ears betrayed amusement, a subtle warning that she was far more capable of handling chaos than Jax could imagine. "Careful," she said, her voice melodic, carrying a slight lilt that reminded Jax of wind chimes in zero gravity. "You might knock over the galaxy." Jax coughed nervously, trying to regain some semblance of dignity. Sorry, welcome to Zenter Prime. I'm, Jax, delivery specialist, sometimes." He waved a hand vaguely at the tray as though that explained everything. Drinks hot, cold, mostly glowing. She laughed, and the sound was a careful mix of amusement and judgment, like she was hearing a joke she wasn't sure she should find funny but couldn't resist. "I'll take one of those glowing drinks, and whatever that is," she said, pointing at a small, pulsating gadget that resembled a miniature star trapped in a clear cube. Jax blinked. "Oh, that's the hyperflux stabilizer. Prevents your hover socks from spontaneously combusting during a sprint. Totally necessary, I think." He smiled nervously. "That'll be 1,000 credits." Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in a way that made Jax feel like he had just accidentally suggested dismantling a planet for spare parts. 1,000 credits? She asked, trying not to laugh but failing because her lips quirked at the corner. "For 2 drinks and a toy." "Yep, premium pricing, space market inflation, galactic economic, reasons." Jax raised his hands helplessly, hoping she wouldn't notice the panic rising in his chest. "You get, top-of-the-line chaos prevention and beverages that can wake your internal organs without touching them." He made a vague gesture toward her midsection, which was probably unnecessary and a little alarming. She handed over a credit chip. Jax swiped it with trembling fingers. The machine beeped, lights flashed, and an obnoxious siren sounded, startling a group of passing spacefish to leap through the air before vanishing in a blink. "Transaction complete," said the terminal, and a holographic thank you projected above him, but it looked more like an accusatory finger wag than gratitude. "Thank you, human," she said, lifting her glowing drink as if to toast him. "I hope your market survives the day." She walked away, each step graceful, her ears flicking as if catching invisible whispers of amusement or gossip from the marketplace. Jax, still frozen, managed a weak, enjoy your thingies. As she disappeared into the crowd, Jax looked down at the receipt, completely oblivious to the fact that he had just charged the Queen of Orithia for the equivalent of a small spaceship in human terms. He shrugged and muttered to himself, well, at least she laughed. He had no idea just how wrong that assessment was, or how much the universe had just tilted on its axis in a slightly ridiculous, almost comic way. Meanwhile, Queen Lyra, because yes, that was who she was, glided back through the winding streets of Zenter Prime, keeping her long ears perfectly poised, hiding a grin behind polite restraint. Her guards, invisible to all but the most observant, trailed a few meters behind, scolding themselves for having to follow her orders on stealth in a market designed to make stealth impossible. Lyra reviewed the transaction in her mind, 1,000 credits for 2 drinks and a hyperflux stabilizer. She tapped one long, elegant ear. Surely there was a human somewhere in the galaxy bold or foolish enough to make this happen. Humor sparkled behind her eyes. Perhaps it was time for a personal visit. Back at his tiny stall, Jax tried to recover his dignity. He waved at a passing drone with a neon sign that read, "Watch your step," and muttered, "If the universe had an IQ test, I'd fail the practical exam." A small, spherical vendor bot rolled by and beeped in agreement, narrowly avoiding a collision with a hover cart carrying 5 bottles of glowing alcohol. Jack sighed, shaking his head, then noticed that one of the energy drinks had started to vibrate on its own, spinning slightly as if it had an agenda. He poked it with a finger. "Don't start plotting against me, okay? I've already got enough enemies." The drink fizzed back at him. Jack swallowed hard. Perhaps he should have studied quantum beverage physics, or maybe he should have just stayed on Earth. Hours passed with minor chaos, mostly caused by Jax himself. He tried to restock, only to discover that a group of multi-legged shoppers had used his crates as a racetrack, causing a cascade of falling merchandise. Each time he tried to pick something up, another crate slipped out of his grasp, and the whole scene became a slapstick routine worthy of the oldest human comedies, now projected across a galaxy that clearly didn't understand subtlety. Somewhere above, a floating AI announcer declared, "Behold the human in his natural habitat, clumsy, persistent, and utterly charming in his incompetence." Jax ignored it, muttering, "Why did I think interstellar trade would be easy?" By late afternoon, the crowd had thinned, leaving Jax alone with a pile of scattered goods and a throbbing headache. He brushed his hands across his forehead and muttered, "Well, at least nothing worse than a minor financial disaster could happen today." And somewhere far away, unseen and highly amused, Queen Lyra was already planning her next visit. Her long ears twitching in anticipation, fully aware that the 1-0 credit human had no idea he had just altered the course of an alien queen's very boring day in a wildly entertaining way. The following morning, Jax arrived at his stall with a slight limp from tripping over his own hover crate the night before, still humming to himself and mentally rehearsing the speech he would give to the universe about being the most efficient energy drink supplier east of the Milky Spiral. He had no idea that a few light years away, Queen Lyra was plotting her little reappearance with a grin that could melt a neutron star. She had spent the night laughing quietly to herself, imagining the expression on Jax's face when he realized he had just charged a queen for a beverage. The palace aides insisted she respond formally, but Lyra waved them off. "No," she said, "this human deserves a personal adjustment of perspective, perhaps even a small chase." Her ears twitched, which in her culture was considered the highest form of amusement short of actual laughter, and the guards groaned, already anticipating the chaos that awaited them. Meanwhile, Jax was busy rearranging glowing crates when a small drone zipped past, carrying a neon sign that read, "Beware of long-eared royals." He squinted at it. "I didn't order a warning today, did I?" But before he could finish, a shadow fell over him, tall and impossibly poised. He looked up to see Lyra standing there, casually leaning on the edge of a floating display, her long ears flicking in an almost rhythmic pattern as though they were keeping time with an invisible orchestra. Jax froze, his brain short-circuiting in a pattern that made zero logical sense. "Oh, hi," he said, trying to sound casual, which came out as "Hey, queen? I mean a stranger lady with elegant ears." He waved at her awkwardly, accidentally knocking over a row of hovering fruit spheres that bounced like mini moons and narrowly missed a robotic vendor who squealed in protest. "Sorry there, boisterous." He swallowed. Lyra tilted her head. "You have no idea who I am, do you?" Her ears twitched with amusement, though her smile remained polite. Jax shook his head vigorously. "Nope, not a clue, but I did notice your aura is kind of powerful. And your shoes are stylish, very stylish, could be queenly, maybe." She laughed, a sound like chimes in wind. "I could have you arrested for rudeness and clumsiness combined." Her voice carried a teasing threat, not menacing at all. "But instead, I think you deserve a lesson in humility, delivered personally." Before Jax could formulate a coherent response, one of the guards, a robotic sentinel with 3 heads that argued constantly about directions, moved to intervene. Lyra waved a hand, and the sentinel froze mid-argument, one head complaining about protocol violations while the others mumbled about breakfast rations. Jax blinked. Did you just freeze a robot? Or was it practicing synchronized stillness?" Lyra's smile widened. "Sometimes one must intervene delicately." She leaned closer, Now follow me, try not to destroy anything else. The universe might be fragile, but my patience is. As they moved through the market, Chaos seemed magnetically attracted to Jax. A pack of tiny hoverdogs mistook his shoelaces for exotic snacks and chased him in circles, causing Lyra to laugh and flick her ears in sheer delight. I've never seen a human perform what appears to be interpretive dance while being pursued by robotic pets, she said. Jax tripped, arms flailing, and landed on a floating table that tipped dramatically, sending a wave of energy drinks into the air. One spun like a miniature planet before landing neatly in his hand. All planned, he said quickly, completely intentional. Lyra rolled her eyes, though her smile never faltered. They finally arrived at a quieter section of the market. A floating garden suspended by anti-gravity fields, with glowing plants and tiny drones flitting between bioluminescent flowers. Lyra gestured for him to sit on a levitating bench. I believe a proper introduction is in order, she said. I am Queen Lyra of Orithia, and you, my dear chaotic human, have just charged me a very unreasonable 1,000 credits for drinks and a stabilizer. Jax's jaw dropped and his face turned shades of red that would have been impressive on any star chart. Wait, you're the queen, the long-eared royalty thing? But I thought, you were fashionable lady person in the market. Oh no, no. He flailed. Lyra chuckled, flicking her ears in amusement. Yes, I could have had you arrested, interrogated, and thrown into a zero-gravity detention chamber for the audacity of billing me, but I prefer entertainment. You human are highly entertaining. Jax slumped in relief. Oh, thank the stars, I was worried for a second, or forever. He paused, glancing nervously at a hovering fruit. So, what happens now? Do I apologize in credits, in gestures, interpretive dance? Lyra's eyes twinkled. Perhaps a combination. First, tell me why you charged me. I'm curious about your logic, if there was any. Well, Jax began, scratching his head as a floating soda can spun past him. You see, I charge everyone for the chaos they bring into my stall. Drinks cost money, gadgets cost money, and well, you brought chaos. That's like universal economic law, right? Her ears twitched and she laughed, a sound that bounced off the floating garden's walls. Universal law indeed, you humans have a peculiar way of valuing things. And yet somehow, it amuses me more than it offends me. As the conversation continued, the two of them settled into a rhythm of playful banter. Jax described the market's more absurd events from his perspective. Robots arguing over credit card ethics, hoverpets trying to negotiate trade deals, and vending machines filing grievances about cosmic inflation. Lyra responded with equal humor, recounting stories from her royal court. Advisors who debated for hours over the correct method of gravity adjustment in the palace, and the occasional diplomatic incident involving three-headed ambassadors who insisted on singing complaints instead of making reports. Hours passed, and Jax's initial terror gave way to laughter, especially when Lyra lightly tapped one of her ears and said, "If you survive this market another day, I may even let you live through the royal inspection next week. Maybe." Jax laughed nervously. I think surviving this long is already a cosmic miracle, honestly. By the end of the day, the chaotic human and the amused queen had formed an unusual understanding. Humor, curiosity, and a mutual fascination with the absurd. The 1,000 credit bill, once a point of tension, became a running joke between them, floating between levitating flowers and drifting market drones, a symbol of beginnings in the most unexpected, awkward, and entertaining way possible. And somewhere overhead, a neon sign flickered. Chaos is officially measured in human credits. Proceed with caution. By the next morning, Jax had developed a strange sense of pride. Not the kind that made humans puff out their chests. No, this was more like a carefully cultivated wobble of confidence that came from surviving another day of interstellar market chaos without being vaporized, eaten by a drone, or arrested by a queen. He had even labeled his crates more carefully, adding tiny warning signs. Caution, contents may cause temporal disorientation and handle with care. Humans may panic. It wasn't clear if anyone would read them, but it made Jax feel organized in a universe that had otherwise made chaos an art form. Lyra, on her side, had been watching from afar, amused by the sudden improvements in the way Jax handled his stall. She had decided, after a night of deliberation, and a brief nap during which her long ears twitched in dreams of ridiculous human mistakes, that it was time to bring him fully into her orbit. Not literally, gravity manipulation had limits, but metaphorically. She floated down into the market, her presence immediately turning heads. The usual patrons quickly learned that if someone had long ears, a composed posture, and the ability to look both regal and playful at once, it was best to stay out of her path. Jax, busy rearranging energy drinks that now glittered slightly more than necessary, did not notice her until she was right in front of him. "Morning, Chaos Bringer," she said, arms crossed but a smile in her eyes. "I see you survived another day without accidentally selling the universe to someone else. Impressive." Jax looked up, nearly dropping a crate in shock. "Queen Lyra, hi, I've been surviving mostly with style." He gestured vaguely at the crates, which promptly wobbed and nearly fell again. "Style is my thing now." Lyra's ears twitched. "Style, yes, and responsibility. I think it's time for you to understand the real value of your billing practices." She gestured for him to follow. The two moved through the market toward a narrow side street that opened into a quiet platform overlooking a small nebula that glimmered in soft purples and greens. Floating plants hovered lazily around them, and a few tiny drones zipped past carrying fruit that seemed to change flavor midair. "You see," Lyra began, "charging me that 1,000 credits, it wasn't just a financial error. It was a lesson, though neither of us knew it at the time. I've watched you since, observing how you respond to chaos, how you improvise, and, well, you've grown." Jax blinked, his mouth opening and closing like a poorly calibrated airlock. "I grew from charging you by accident." "Yes," she said, ears flicking, "and from surviving the aftermath. You've learned patience, problem-solving under pressure, and even diplomacy, somehow." She smiled, the kind that suggested she could see every corner of the cosmos and still find amusement in humans. Jax scratched the back of his head. "Diplomacy, huh? I did manage to calm the hoverdogs this morning with a dance. And some singing, maybe that counts." Lyra laughed, a warm, melodic sound that made nearby plants shimmer brighter. "It counts, surprisingly, and that's why I want you to help me with a minor project." She waved a hand toward a floating map of galactic trade routes. "I need someone who understands chaos, and you, human, have demonstrated a remarkable knack for navigating it. Plus, your humor is surprisingly effective at diffusing tense situations. Very few humans can do that." Jax nearly choked on the air, which was already slightly tinged with anti-gravity particles. "You want me to work with you on royal projects?" "Yes, but it won't just be about work. It will be learning, adventure, occasional life-threatening chaos, and you will be rewarded with something beyond credits." She leaned closer, her ears brushing faintly against the floating leaves. "Experience, knowledge, perspective." Jax gulped, and maybe, not accidentally billing anyone else. Lyra's smile widened, almost conspiratorially. "Well, let's call it optional." Their partnership began that very day, starting with minor diplomatic errands that somehow involved Jax navigating a series of interplanetary marketplaces, alien councils, and sentient vending machines that were convinced they were sovereign entities. Every step of the way, Lyra guided him with subtle instructions, her humor keeping him grounded. Whenever he tripped, misquoted galactic law, or sent a drone careening into a display of rare antimatter fruit, she was there to laugh with him, not at him. Somehow, the chaos felt less like destruction and more like creation. As weeks passed, Jax's confidence grew. He learned to anticipate the unpredictable, to read subtle signals in alien body language, ears, tails, antennae, wings, you name it, and even to negotiate without breaking anything, most of the time. In return, Lyra found herself enjoying the unpredictability of humans more than she had expected. His laughter was contagious, his mistakes charming, and his unique perspective on the universe refreshing for a queen accustomed to rigid protocol. One afternoon, they found themselves floating above the market again, overlooking the colorful swirl of activity below. Jax handed Lyra a glowing drink, identical to the one that had started this whole adventure. She accepted it, raising her eyebrows. "For old time's sake," he said, "or to remind you that I'm still learning." She chuckled, flicking her ears.